Have you ever paused at a classic car show, spotted a 1955 Studebaker Commander with its gleaming body, and asked yourself, what's hiding under that hood? It's not a famous name like the Hemi or the Chevy small block, but the 259 V8 was the very heart that brought Studebaker to life during its golden era. In an age when the V8 engine wars were exploding across America, Studebaker, an independent automaker, introduced a small but gutsy engine. It didn't overshadow the industry giants, but it quietly touched the hearts of car lovers in a way that endured. In today's video, we're going to take a deeper look into the Studebaker 259 V8, why it was forgotten, and why it absolutely deserves to be remembered as a vital part of American V8 history. In the early 1950s, America entered a post-war boom, an era of rapid economic growth, where the automobile became a symbol of wealth, progress, and freedom. While the big three, Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler, dominated the market, Studebaker, an independent automaker based in South Bend, Indiana, chose to follow its own path. Studebaker was no newcomer. It was one of the oldest car manufacturers in America, having produced wagons since the 19th century. But by the 1950s, the pressure was mounting. The industry giants were rolling out more powerful cars at lower prices and with massive production capacity. Studebaker knew it needed a breakthrough. In 1951, the company introduced its first V8 engine, the 232 cubic inch displacement. It was a big step forward, but not quite enough to impress a market that craved more muscle. That's when Studebaker engineers began working on an improved version. And the result was the 259 V8, launched in 1955. This engine arrived at a critical juncture. Studebaker was struggling after its ambitious merger with Packard, a deal that failed to deliver the expected benefits. With shrinking market share and tight financial resources, the 259 V8 was born as a last-ditch effort to stake a claim in the fierce V8 engine wars. Fundamentally, the 259 was a 90-degree V8 engine utilizing a conventional overhead valve pushrod design. Its displacement of 259 cubic inches was achieved through a bore of 3.56 inches and a stroke of 3.25 inches. This configuration favored low-end torque over peak horsepower, making it ideal for city driving and long highway cruising. The engine block was cast in iron and featured a forged crankshaft with 5 main bearings, a robust setup compared to many contemporaries that used only 3. Fuel delivery came via a 2-barrel or 4-barrel carburetor, depending on the version, paired with a traditional contact point ignition system. One of its major advantages was simplicity and accessibility. Spark plug wires were neatly routed, valve covers were easy to remove, and the engine bay wasn't overly cramped. Altogether, it was a mechanic-friendly layout, easy to service, easy to modify, and inherently dependable. Although the 259 V8 was primarily built to serve everyday driving needs, Studebaker wasn't shy about experimenting with high-performance variants to satisfy the horsepower-hungry market of the mid-1950s. One of the standout versions was the Power Pack, which included a 4-barrel carburetor, dual exhaust system, and a raised compression ratio of 8.5 to 1. This boosted output from the base 162 horsepower to around 185 horsepower, quite impressive for an engine with only 259 cubic inches. Going a step further, the most powerful iteration, often dubbed the Super 259, appeared in models like the Studebaker President Speedster and select Commander trims. featuring a mild performance camshaft, even higher compression, and optimized ignition. This version could hit the 200 horsepower mark. That bold, fine tuning made the 259 V8 stand out, not for overpowering numbers, but for the way it carved out its own identity among V8 giants of the era. 1955 saw a fierce V8 war. Chevrolet unveiled the high-revving, highly moddable 265 small block. Ford countered with the 272 and 292Y blocks. Durable, but heavy and complicated. Dodge offered the Red Ram Hemi, powerful and imposing, but expensive and maintenance-heavy. Amidst this horsepower race, the Studebaker 259 V8 took a different path. It wasn't about domination. It was about versatility. This engine could power an elegant sedan, a sporty coupe, or even a light-duty pickup. That made it different, not a typical muscle mill, but a dependable heart, quietly driving some of Studebaker's most iconic vehicles. Another unique aspect, while major brands poured money into advertising their engines, the 259 V8 was rarely spotlighted. Though never heavily promoted, the 259 V8 quietly powered some of Studebaker's most iconic 1950s models, from elegant sedans and sporty coupes to premium touring cars. Thanks to its smoothness, compact size, and reliability, it helped turn Studebaker's bold styling into something that wasn't just beautiful to look at, but genuinely enjoyable to drive. Take the 1955 Commander, for instance, one of the brand's most refined sedans. Under the hood was the 259 V8, not built for drag strips, but to deliver smooth, confident performance on any road. It wasn't overly powerful, but it was perfectly balanced, true to Studebaker's practical yet sophisticated character. Then there's the President's Speedster, the top-tier model of 1955, with a sporty exterior, two-tone interior, and aircraft-inspired dash. It featured a high-performance version of the 259 V8, offering brisk acceleration while retaining that signature Studebaker smoothness. Even in the early Golden Hawks, the 259 served as the standard engine before being replaced by Packard V8s. Though later overshadowed, the 259 laid the technical foundation for what became one of Studebaker's most powerful and iconic series. And even though it eventually faded from the spotlight in favor of bigger V8s, the 259 still managed to leave its mark in surprising places like police cruisers, public service fleets, and even grassroots drag strips. Let's start with law enforcement and municipal use. Many small-town departments, especially in the American Midwest, adopted Studebaker Commanders, or LARCs, with the 259 under the hood. The reason was simple. They were reliable, easy to fix, and quick enough for city patrol. At a time when budgets were tight, a V8 that wasn't a gas guzzler but still delivered decent power was a smart choice. Beyond that, the 259 V8 found duty in small fire trucks, postal vehicles, and even light-duty pickups from Studebaker, clear signs of its mechanical versatility and long-term dependability. In the world of amateur drag racing, the 259 became the quiet star of many sleeper builds, cars that looked ordinary but could surprise at the green light. With a few mods like performance cams, a 4-barrel carburetor, and a free-breathing exhaust, the 259 delivered far more than its mild manner suggested. Although the 259 V8 had powered many of Studebaker's standout models, it was never given a chance to evolve further. The reason? It wasn't about the engine itself, but rather the increasingly troubled finances of the South Bend automaker. By the late 1950s, Following its merger with Packard, Studebaker was spiraling into decline. Falling sales, high operating costs, and mounting pressure from the Big Three forced the company to slash development budgets. Instead of investing in all-new powertrains, Studebaker opted to stretch existing platforms, notably upgrading the 259 to a 289 CID version to squeeze out more power without overhauling production lines. At the same time, the market began shifting toward larger V8s, engines over 300 CID. The 259 quickly became seen as too small to compete in the mid to upper tier segments. As a result, it was phased out in favor of the 289 and eventually outsourced engines like the Packard V8 and even McKinnon-sourced units in Studebaker's final years. The 259 didn't disappear due to design flaws or performance failure. It simply belonged to a time when Studebaker still had room to innovate. Once the company shifted to survival mode, anything not driving big sales was inevitably left behind, no matter how much engineering heart had gone into it. Though once the technical heart of Studebaker, the 259 V8, couldn't escape its fate, not because it was flawed, but because the company that created it was slowly losing its ability to survive as an independent force in a fiercely competitive industry. After the 1954 merger with Packard, Studebaker was no longer the same. The initial hope of sharing platforms and scaling production quickly ran into harsh reality. Both companies were already struggling, and instead of lifting each other up, they dragged one another down. Amid that climate, the 259 V8, while still reliable, was seen as underpowered in a market now obsessed with larger, more powerful V8s. Studebaker's response was to stretch the existing design, creating the 289 cubic inch displacement variant for extra horsepower without developing a new engine from scratch. It was a survival move, cost-effective, but also a sign of dwindling innovation. By 1964, the closure of the South Bend plant, where the 259 was built, marked the official end of the engine. In its final years, Studebaker turned to outsourced powertrains, such as the McKinnon 283 V8 for cars built in Canada. This was a new Studebaker, one with no proprietary engine, no distinct engineering fingerprint, just a name clinging to survival. The end of the 259 wasn't merely a product update. It symbolized the death knell of Studebaker's independent engineering era. When the homegrown V8 disappeared, so did a part of what made the brand different from every other player. And when Studebaker vanished from the market in 1966, it didn't just take a name with it, it buried an entire chapter of American automotive spirit that once thrived on uniqueness and self-reliance. Though Studebaker exited the stage over half a century ago, the 259 V8 still quietly lives on, not just in museums or show garages, but in the hearts of true classic car lovers. What makes the 259 so beloved isn't about the specs, it's about real-world experience and emotional value. For vintage car enthusiasts, the 259 represents a time when you could pop the hood, tune the carburetor yourself, swap spark plugs with a wrench. No diagnostics, no computers required. That's why the 259 remains a favorite in the American restoration and preservation scene. It's easy to work on, parts are relatively accessible, and most importantly, it delivers a raw, mechanical driving feel, where the sound, vibration, and throttle response all reflect a bygone era. Many who owned a 1950s Studebaker still recall the sensation of sitting behind the wheel, hearing the 259 hum gently and gliding down the highway, and they call it the sound of youth. In today's world of over-digitized cars, the 259 V8 is like an old wooden guitar in a room full of synthesizers, not flashy, not complex, but full of soul. And that's why it's remembered, not for being perfect, but for being genuinely real. The Studebaker 259 V8 may not have reshaped automotive history, but it represents something that's fading fast: engineering honesty, independent creativity, and the grounded character of the post-war era. It didn't need superchargers or jaw-dropping horsepower, but it left a lasting impression through smoothness, durability, and a driving feel that was unapologetically real. If you've ever owned one, driven one, or simply heard the quiet rumble of a 259, share your story with us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep exploring more of these forgotten but unforgettable machines together.